1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery.
Situational awareness. Ever heard of it? The most accepted definition is
the perception of elements in the environment within a volume of time and space, comprehension of their meaning, and the projection of their status in the future.
In this program, we're going to talk about some of the things that can cause a loss of situational awareness and provide a few tips on how to get and maintain awareness. There has been a lot of research conducted on both the pilot and controller sides of the aerospace industry as it applies to situational awareness. The findings from both perspectives are valuable in that both jobs involve ever-changing situations and the requirement to handle multiple tasks concurrently. NASA is at the forefront of this research.
We're here today at the Johnson Space Center in Houston to meet with some of the experts that conducted this research. Hey, John.
What?
Was there an appointment with?
Hold on a second. Right there somewhere.
Managing several tasks concurrently is a constant part of the job as an air traffic controller. Most of these tasks involve multiple procedural steps. The high degree of familiarity and standardization of the procedures keep the workload within human capabilities.
One of the most common forms of error during multitasking is forgetting to perform some intended action. Controllers have an amazing capacity to absorb information and make split-second decisions based on changing situations. But everyone, no matter how competent and conscientious they are, is vulnerable to lapses in memory.
research indicates that people normally can perform more than one task at the same time, only in limited circumstances.
Humans have two cognitive systems that they use to perform tasks. One is the conscious process, which requires considerable concentration and effort, and the other is an automated process, which allows a task to be completed with little effort or attention. Be conscious of your own actions and how those could be a distraction to others. Interruptions caused by distractions and unexpected demands disrupt the normal flow of both the conscious and automated processes.
Whoa. This is where they do the testing on the astronaut suits.
Oh, that's cool. Let's go look.
All right.
Hey, John. Here's one in your size.
Hey. One of the subtle traps of an interruption is the effects sometimes linger long after the interruption has occurred. Conversation is a significant distraction since dialogue requires both listening and contemplating your response. People involved in conversation need to continually and consciously develop responses to the other person. In a NASA study, more than half of the aircraft incidents studied involving missed crossing restrictions or altitude deviations, discussions were occurring in the cockpit, which distracted the pilots. As with pilots, errors occur when controllers are interrupted and forget to resume the interrupted task. Interruptions impair both individual and team performance. When controllers must defer a task that they normally perform at a certain point, they introduce vulnerability and may forget to execute the task, especially when they are busy with other demands. Deferring a task creates a considerable risk that the controller may forget to perform the task later if there is no reminder. Essentially, the controller must remember to remember. Controllers who have to remember to perform a task later must intentionally make a mental note to return to that task. Hey, this is the Space Shuttle Simulator. Let's check it out.
Boosters ready.
Check.
Burn trajectory ready.
Check.
Thanks. Where were we? We just finished burn trajectory.
So how can someone program their mind to remember and then stay focused on the task once it is remembered?
Understanding that you are vulnerable to making mistakes once an interruption has occurred can help reduce that vulnerability.
One technique that can be used involves a three-step process. It's the IAD. Interruptions always distract. Also referred to as identify, ask, decide. Identify the interruption when it occurs. Ask, what was I doing before the interruption? And decide what action needs to be taken to get back on track. The entire thought process can be accomplished in a fraction of a second.
Science indicates that for a human to recall a task that they have postponed, they must incorporate one or more cues to remind them. It is helpful if you mentally tell yourself when you will accomplish it. For instance, I will descend American after I clear Delta for the approach. Another method to help with memory is mentally chunking information into categories such as special use airspace, climbing aircraft, aircraft handed off, etc. Once information is grouped, details are easier to recall.
Having good situational awareness can reduce your chances of having an operational error or deviation. Okay, John, I'm going to try this thing, but I only want to be in here a few seconds, so keep an eye on me.
No worries. Just a second. Hello?
Hey, John, this thing is moving.
Oh, I can't make that tea time. I'm going to be down here a couple more days. It's like 95, hot and humid down here. It's just go on, gotta go. Another cause of errors is preoccupation with one task to the detriment of another. Preoccupation with one task causes monitoring of other tasks to stop or weaken and can result in a failure to notice a change in the traffic situation. This is commonly known as tunnel vision. This can occur when performing heads-down activities such as entering or amending flight plans, looking at approach plates, attending to an abnormal situation, or addressing a task with a high degree of urgency. Interestingly enough, one of the biggest hazards of abnormal situations is that they distract the controller from attending to normal, routine duties. When a situation is perceived to be urgent or threatening, the normal human response is to narrow the focus, which unfortunately tends to reduce the ability to analyze and resolve the non-routine situation. NASA conducted research on aircraft accidents attributed to crew error and found that nearly half of these accidents involved lapses of attention because of interruptions, distractions, or preoccupation with one task to the detriment of another.
One of the darkest days in aviation history occurred on December 29, 1972, when the cockpit crew of Eastern 401 became distracted by what appeared to be a malfunctioning gear down light and inadvertently disabled their autopilot. They became so preoccupied with trying to resolve the light bulb issue that none of the pilots noticed that the autopilot had been disabled. This resulted in a very slow descent that eventually drove the L-1011 into the ground, killing 99 people. What had seemed like a routine approach to Miami on a VFR night ended up far from routine.
Hey Rick, I hope you're not still angry with me about that little mistake earlier.
Oh, of course not, John. Distractions happen. But hold on a second. I'm going to call my wife. I think this is the heart of the operation here.
Let's go in and see if it's like our control room.
There are several situations that can contribute to a loss of awareness. Being too busy is one of them.
When a controller handles over 10 aircraft, the ability to remember aircraft specifics declines. Tasks which require conscious effort, such as conversations, new situations, problem solving, etc., limit the amount of attention that can be devoted to other tasks. As complexity builds, it becomes more difficult to remember everything that is occurring.
Overconfidence can quickly lead to overload. Everyone has limits, and each of us needs to be aware of our own.
We also need to be aware that if we work at the limits of our capability, we set ourselves up for failure. At this level, just one thing out of the ordinary can cause us to exceed our limit. High workload and being overwhelmed causes controllers to abandon strategic planning and instead react to each demand as it is presented. It is important to be able to recognize when you need help and get it before you start to lose awareness. Key into your personal stress indicators, such as moving closer to the scope, foot tapping, or increasing verbal cadence or volume.
Since vulnerability to mistakes increases as workload increases, controllers can utilize certain strategies to maintain awareness.
Such strategies involve prioritizing tasks, being selective on information you retain, focusing on information that is needed, and letting go of non-essential information. Delegating responsibility, reducing or eliminating unnecessary tasks, not postponing critical tasks, as this increases the chance of them being forgotten.
Another situation that can lead to a loss of awareness is when traffic is too slow. Just like you tend to lose focus while driving when things are too routine, this can happen at the position when traffic is slow or complexity is down.
Habit can cause controllers to take the routine versus a less common but safer action.
Force yourself to scan. Focusing on something like merging target procedures can avoid the problem of loss of focus during slower periods. Always be aware of where your attention is and where it isn't. Focus, focus, focus.
So now that we've talked about some things that could cause a loss of awareness, how do we develop situational awareness in the first place?
It all begins with getting a good position relief briefing. You cannot recall what you have not accurately received. No one else can ensure that you received the message.
The position relief briefing is the foundation upon which your entire scan will be built. Do not underestimate the importance of this procedure.
Prior to getting a position relief briefing, review the status information area. Observe the position for a few minutes to familiarize yourself with what is going on. Cross-check radar data with flight plan information. When you feel prepared, let the controller know you are ready to get the verbal briefing. Use checklists, either electronic or hard copy. It is vital so that no information is overlooked. Facility directives will give guidance on exactly how each facility handles this. Ask questions to clarify any unclear or contradictory information. Let the controller that is being relieved know when you are ready to take the position. The relieved controller should remain and watch for a few minutes before unplugging to make certain that nothing was missed.
I wonder what they do in here.
It's the neutral buoyancy lab.
A what?
Come on, I'll show you.
Thank you.
So is that the space shuttle there? Yep. This is where the astronauts simulate working in space without gravity. I'm gonna go check it out. Maintaining and building awareness is done with a scan.
To accomplish multiple goals, we must frequently return our attention to each goal to keep it active. That is essentially what is happening when you scan.
An amazing amount of information is analyzed by controllers when doing a scan.
What you are doing is reassessing the situation and deciding what action needs to be taken, and then prioritizing those actions. This will all be done within a second or two. Each controller will develop their own scanning techniques. They may even vary from position to position, but developing a scan that works for you is important.
Since a scan needs to be accomplished quickly, the initial stages of a scan can be done from a distance without a close focus. Here are some suggested scanning strategies.
Look for aircraft that are close to each other. If they are in proximity to each other, look at their altitudes. If they are at the same altitude, further analyze by looking at routes and finally speeds. Briefly scan the data blocks for other than normal conditions. More than one altitude indicates transitioning altitudes or block altitudes, increasing the chance of a confliction. Ask yourself, is anything flashing or color-coded? Check perimeters. Look for aircraft exiting and entering your airspace. Interrupt your scan by going back to aircraft with higher priority more often than those with no control action required. Verify that aircraft are in a position to comply with an instruction. Check to make certain that aircraft are complying with clearances. Periodically search for forgotten tasks. Take advantage of slower periods to accomplish tasks that can be completed ahead of time. Scan the flight data information, the SIA, and flight progress strips on an occasional basis, as this information is not nearly as dynamic.